The conversation that ensued after all of the background information from the last video was just communications between me, my wife, and the mother goddess. At the time, they were calling me the high priest, and my wife, the scribe. The reason for that was we didn't know anything else, so it was all world church ideology, terminology, and that's all we knew. So they were patient with us, and they didn't even really first bring up incarnations. But during these conversations, we did find out that we were incarnations, and that led to a snowballing effect. The conversations led from us being incarnations to the concept that there are even more than one incarnations. Now, we were well aware of this in the world church. Our main focus in the world church was an incarnation of the Father. So it wasn't like it was shocking news, but the shocking part was that it wasn't just the Father who had incarnations. And the ensuing scenario led up to the fact that throughout history, he has had more than just one. Okay, he has had in historical texts, every lifetime, one is born, and when one dies, another one is picked and chosen by the Father, and then again, and again. And this goes on and on. And so there's a multitude of gods and goddesses. These incarnations, they help to bring the gods to earth. Well, they're also their own godheads. And when they pass away, they go to heaven, or the afterlife. I don't know if you want to necessarily use the word heaven, because that's full of a little bit of dogma. But they go to the afterlife. And in the afterlife, they have their own place, their own part of the afterlife, where they are a god that can be worked with. They can come back to earth and help their followers. And that's sort of the deal with the situation. So, that's where things were at the time. But it wasn't just learning about us being incarnations. It wasn't just learning about all the various other incarnations in the world. We learned about magic, but not the kind of magic you see in the movies per se. We learned about the type of magic that talks about the goddess magic, who she was, and how she had the ability to dictate and kind of orchestrate all the other gods' powers. Now, it may be a little bit more complex than that, but in the basic sense, that is what magic is. The ability to do actions to control the powers of the gods. And not necessarily their powers in their willful sense, but when a god exists, an incarnation, or mainly a godhead exists, like the Father, Mother, beauty, magic, when these godheads exist, they're emanating their power into the world. And that's why the world is the way it is. Love is an eminence. It's emanating from the goddess of love. This is how it works in the world. The Father's creative power emanates from him. The Mother's motherly drive emanates from her. And it fills the world. It's there. And magic can utilize it while it's there. So we were introduced into magic, basic magic, and we learned things like how to create a wand or magical instruments to help control magic more. So enchanting items to help us control magic more. And in this case, something we were familiar with in the area that the West, in this part of the world in America, is wands, and it's a very popular thing here in the movies. So they use that as an illustration so that you can even enchant a stick type object to help flow magic and help things go. It doesn't have to be a wand. Taoists use a finger scenario, swords are used, various different styles are used, but in our scenario at the time, they were gentle with us, not just jumping us right into all this knowledge and confusing us. Also talks about cauldrons, because another thing that here in America in the West is a popular association with witchcraft. And actually, cauldrons led to the next step. In order to enchant a cauldron, this is the scenario. You get your cauldron, whatever size it is, and this is usually for making potions and things. And you have to enchant it on an enchanting plate. Now, a wand can be done without an enchanting plate. However, I will say that if you do your wands and you want them to be stronger, an enchanting plate is important. Enchanting plates are basically not really plates like a dish, but a place to place something. And it is designed for enchanting. It has an atmosphere of power in it. It has symbols and things that are meaningful to you. And it's utilized in a way to help you make your things better. So for instance, if I were to take the cauldron and place it on the enchanting plate, and I were to say a spell, I want this cauldron to be used to enhance my potions. And I want this to be done by the use of the power in this enchanting plate. Anything on the enchanted plate at that time would have been drawn into the cauldron. Any powers that I had, if I had stone powers or I had family heirlooms with sentimental powers in them, it could all be sudden. Now that cauldron has powers. And again, you could put idols on it as well to get the power from the idol or your god that you're working with. Either way, in the scenario we were being taught about cauldrons, and the mother goddess was doing this herself, personalizing. Now again, this is back to the concept of what we do here in America, what we're used to seeing in the typical Hollywood settings. And it's useful. It's not that it isn't. And it is something historical. Cauldrons have been used to make potions. Wands have been used in the past. But maybe not quite like they do in the movies. However, the cauldron, it needed to be enchanted. And they wanted to utilize enchanting plates to teach us how to do more advanced enchanting. And so for this all to go through, they knew that we didn't know anything. We had just made our first wand a week before. We didn't barely know anything. It was just like an introductory course. Here's what it all is about. Really didn't teach us much. And so what they did, what the mother did, paired us up with Kendrin. She's a Welsh goddess, typically described as a Welsh goddess. And they paired us up with her to teach us the cauldron making. And she was the one who put us onto the concept, along with the mother's guidance, of tree spirits. Now that changed everything, because the idea was that we were going to go to the woods and we were going to have to get a tree spirit to enchant the enchanting plate for us, because we just didn't have enough knowledge to do it ourselves. And they wanted to kind of get us jump-started, the mother did. And over time we would learn how to make our own enchanting plates, which I do now, but at the time, back 3 years ago, we had to kind of, but because we didn't know how, we were just going to go get an advanced tree spirit, someone in the magical realm who already knows this. And it's very common. It's like elementary for the mystical world. Now see, we hadn't been introduced to mystic beings yet. Now mystic beings were going to change everything in our life at this point. The world for us was going to change. Most we knew of was this idea of a tree spirit. Now, it eventually was enlightened to us that they are a form of elf, an elfin. And this tree spirit concept was just very foreign to us. But what tree spirits do is they use a tree as a body, but they're more of a spirit, like a wandering spirit type thing. But they're not wandering because they've chosen a body in a tree. This is very common in the world. And it's pretty much an ideology that spirits can inhabit items and they can live in them, yes. It's very popular in the world. And the majority of the time it's a tree, a living tree. And there's a scenario, in this scenario, a tree spirit can leave their tree for a couple days, but they have to return to it. And that's one key that we had to keep in mind, the mother was beginning to teach us. Also, if a tree spirit's tree dies, it stays in the tree for a couple days, looking for a new home, a new tree, a new body. These tree spirits can live, I don't know, unfathomable amount of years, because they're just a spirit that wanders to a new body. I don't know the ins and outs on tree spirits. What it means to move from one tree to another. I really don't know what that does to the spirit of a tree spirit, but I just know that they can live a long time. And so we were basically told, and my wife was told, Beauty, this incarnation was told, look, you're going to have to go and you're going to have to talk to tree spirits. You're going to have to get this tree spirit to come back to you, help you enchant your enchanting plate, but part-time. So in order to do this, they recommended that we find a tree spirit that's already has a tree that had fallen, and has no home now. So they're probably going to be more willing, well, hey, I ain't got a body now anyways. Might as well go with you guys, look for a tree somewhere near you, and find that later. I might as, it was basically, it was like, okay, he'll probably be more willing to cooperate at that point. He'll help you guys out. And so that's what we were going to do.